Hey, 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 and welcome to Life Class. I am excited about our guest tonight. We're going to welcome to the stage Dr. Malone.
Hey, Dr. J. Thank you for having me. How you doing?
I am happy to be here and happy to have you here.
I'm
You
happy to
know,
be here.
I am not happy about what's going on in our new administration. I'm excited to have this conversation with you because I know you're going to bring us lots and lots of insight.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
So let's just start off by telling everyone a little about your background and how did you get in this social justice space.
Absolutely. So, a little bit about me. Born and raised in Mississippi. As you know, I'm a Mississippi boy. Been here in DC now 11 years. I can't believe I've been here that long. But I'm originally from Mississippi, and my grandmother was born in 1914. And my parents had me older in life. So, I had an opportunity to be partially raised and mentored by my grandmother, who lived to be 94 years old. And as you can imagine, Dr. J, my grandmother, born in 1914, saw a lot of American history in the 1900s. And so my grandmother was a civil rights activist. She taught me about the civil rights movement, reared me in Mississippi. And when I got older, it kind of just happened, right? I saw things that wasn't right in my community, and I was reminded of the teaching of my late grandmother, Mary Malone, who told me, to always speak up when you see something that's not right. It's not good enough to just be in a number. You need to be out there speaking out, using your voice. And I started to see issues that I didn't like. And one of the first issues I worked on, Dr. J, was the HB 1526 bill. It was the bill that was discriminating against the LGBTQ plus community in Mississippi. And from there, I started working on the flag issue. I started working with you on Emmett Till, poverty, education, economic development. I really just kind of got involved, but it wasn't anything that I set out to do, Dr. J. I wanted to go to school and be a lawyer and work on, social issues. But I never saw myself getting so deep involved in the social justice movement. But I just couldn't sit on the sidelines, and now it's embedded in me. I always like to say I think my grandmother saw it and, imparted all that in me, knowing that one day I would, pick up the mantle of social justice and try and do some good in the world. And so that's kind of how a short version of how I kind of got involved.
So your grandmother kind of planted that seed.
Absolutely. My grandmother, Dr. J, I remember my grandmother, who was born in 1914, talked about the civil rights movement. And I will never forget, my grandmother told me I had a great aunt. Her name was Aunt Lucy. And my Aunt Lucy marched with Dr. King at Tougaloo. But my grandmother she explained to me, she said, in the movement, there are going to be people like your Aunt Lucy, which they would consider people like me, who march and who's on the front line, who's always out there. And my grandmother said, but there were also people in the movement who were behind the scenes. We had our prayer warriors. We had people who, provided the lunch. We had people who were the financial people. And her imparting that in me early on, Dr. J, really helped me to understand that while I may be in the forefront, like people like yourself and I, we're the type A personality, we're in the forefront, but I'm so respectful to everybody's place in the movement. And that's why I always say that no matter big or small, we all have a circle of influence, and it's up to us to determine how we're going to use it. Everybody's not going to be in front of the camera like you and I, but everybody has a circle of influence. And I always ask people, how are you going to use that circle of influence? But my grandmother sharing that story with me made me very respectful of everybody in the movement. You've been out there, Dr. J, that sometimes it gets rough out there on the ground. And so sometimes people only respect people who are the vocal people. But there are so many interconnected people who help to push forth a movement, right? And we saw that with the Mississippi flag. We saw that with trying to bend towards justice with, issues like education and poverty equality. Everybody plays their role in trying to push the needle on those issues.
Man, just listen to you speak just bring back so many memories. And you make me think about when we was planning with the poor people's campaign, and we was doing all these we did 40 days of disobedience. And people don't, like you said, people don't understand the people behind the scenes. In case we got arrested, they had to have a list of everybody that was there, who to contact, just the level of planning that it takes to do these things. Like, wow, you just bringing so many memories up for me.
Absolutely. Dr. J, I remember, even when we think about like us trying to bring down the flag in Mississippi, if it wasn't for you and your students, I mean, they started the movement, right? Because people was at work. People was also scared to do it. And so the students was helping to bring that crowd out and help to, garnish that attention. And so it's so important. Like you said, all of the groundwork that goes behind the movement is important. And I think that's so important as we talk about strategizing, with Trump being back in the White House. I call it Trump 2.0. Right. It's going to be important more than ever, Dr. J, that, people that are listening to us, there is no egos here. There is no elite. There is no big or small. There's no titles. We are all going to have to get on one band and one wagon. And we're going to have to figure out how we all can use our circles of influence to really make a difference. And I know we live in a competitive society. I know everybody has an agenda these days, but now is the time. There is no more agendas. It is unifying. It is, Dr. J, if you need help, I'm going to help you today. If I need help, I'm helping you tomorrow. And we got to divide and conquer, and we have to unify because this 2.0 is very much more strategic. It understands the dynamics we're living in. We live in I always like to say, a reality TV housewives type society now. But what's so sad about this 2.0, Dr. J, is the reality. This is not reality TV that some parts of it is scripted. The impact of these decisions or the reality of the everyday people, right? So when we talk about, on yesterday, the president signed these bulks of executive orders, but no executive orders. The only executive order that got close to talking about lowering the grocery prices and gas is to order federal agencies to do a review of the inflation, right? That has no direct impact on the corporate companies and the people who control the inflation, right? So
They all was sitting there. They was all at that. They was witnessing all of this.
Absolutely. So when we think about all of this, we got to be very strategic because 2.0 doesn't give a damn about eggs, grocery prices, or gas. It is a government by, billionaires, right? And so we really going to have to figure out very quickly how we're going to resist. We're going to figure out very quickly how we're going to message to everyday people, right? As far as yesterday, Dr. J, everybody I talked to, I kept it very simple. It was an executive order to reverse prescriptions, right? The lowering of prescriptions, right? Mandating those big pharma companies to start to regulate around those prescriptions, right? So people on Medicaid and Medicare, that's why they started to see that $35, right? For the lower cost of insulin, right? That's simple. That's relatable to people. We're gonna have to learn how to be relatable. We're gonna learn how to have to talk to people very simple, very, straightforward, because this 2.0 is going to move quite swiftly and quite fast because, again, they've been to Washington before. They've made those mistakes. And so they understand and they know that they only have 2 years to do this. They know the mass majority of people, when they find out that they have been conned by the president of the United States, Donald Trump, they're not going to have the House in 2 years. Facts, right? They're not going to have a house in 2 years because people are going to wake up and say, you know what? Eggs didn't happen, gas didn't happen, etc. Right? Which is only a proponent of why I really think Donald Trump is in the White House. There's that other elephant in the room that I'm sure we'll talk about later. Yeah.
Before we even just jump into that Donald Trump discussion and Project 2025 and them getting rid of the Department of Education, I want to focus on us. What do you think it's going to take for us to come together and work? I believe like a lot of our people are on this rat race. They keep them so busy. A lot of people can't afford to just even have time to read a bill. You know what I'm saying? To know what's going on. A lot of people want to be involved, but they don't have time. What is it going to take for us to come together as a collective and really fight against what's going on?
Yeah, when I think about it, Dr. J, I think like so many times in our community, we are spread it so many different ways. I think about when we first started in the movement and what has kept our collective together. I think about everybody who was in that movement when we started with Mississippi Flag and all the other issues. We still are very supportive of each other, and we are sharing of that collective information, right? Like when I call you, all right, what time I need to be on this call to talk to your student? What do I need to do? Like always having each other back. That may sound very simple, Dr. J, like just my first starting off, but it's important. We live in a day and time, we live in a very polarized society that we gatekeep, we don't share information.
Come on.
And that is our number one issue, right? Like we are gatekeepers of information, of positions, of all of these other things. And we spend so much time gatekeeping that we never get the information out to the people that it really matters. And we never, we're not unified. If you think about it, a collective, me and you sharing our contact list together and sending one email out with with concise information is much better than seven of us sending it out, right? But
Right.
people gatekeep, right? If you call me and say, Duvalier, I need your mailing list that you collected on your book tour. Hey, these are the emails I got, right? That may sound simple, Dr. J, but we got to find a way to unify, and we can't gatekeep, number one. And secondly, we have to figure out what are going to be our non-negotiables, right? I think the Speaker of the House did a great job talking about, Social Security, and looking at Medicaid and Medicare. What are our non-negotiables? And we don't let Washington determine our non-negotiables. We determine our non-negotiables, right? And that comes to our core values. What are we going to accept and what are we not going to accept? And then strategically figure out a way that we organize and we resist. This time around, Dr. J, is going to have to be where we lawyer up, which means that we support organizations like the ACLU that are going to have those lawyers. The NAACP is going to be time for them to rise up, to lawyer up, because we've marched before. We've done all that. It's still, I believe what Dr. King said, there's nothing more powerful than the footsteps of a determined people. But we also gonna have to follow the money, and we're gonna have to lawyer up this time around. And we're going to have to let it play out in the different courts. President Biden left us in a pretty good space when we think about the circuit courts all across the country. And this time we're going to have to be more strategic. We're going to have to lawyer up, and we're going to have to not gatekeep. Gatekeeping, in my opinion, Dr. J, is one of the biggest downfalls, and particularly of the African American community. We spend too much time gatekeeping and not unifying. It's, in my opinion, biggest thing.
Why do you think that gatekeep? Do you think that gatekeeping is so that we could act like that we put people on, or that we are better than? Where does this gatekeeping come from?
Well, Dr. J, this may sound very simple, but when people don't know who they are and whose they are and who they're called to be, that's when you begin to gatekeep. Dr. J, there's no reason for me to gatekeep anything in my life because I know exactly what I'm called to do. I know what God put me on this earth to do. And I know that if I keep a pure heart and I do good and I keep helping people, I keep giving out information, that God is going to in return bless me. And so when people don't know who they are and they don't know whose they are, they tend to gatekeep. They tend to only want to let a certain amount of people in. It's because they don't know who they are and they don't know whose they are. Dr. J, me helping you and putting you on is not going to take away from me being Duvalier Malone and walking in my divine destiny. If anything, it's going to help me, right?
Amen. You
And
better know what
so
to say.
I mean, that may sound like a simple, answer, but when people don't know who they are and whose they are, they tend to gatekeep. And so I would encourage people who are watching this to find out what it is that you're called to do and really get connected to something greater than yourself. And there is then no need to gatekeep because you're going to see the hand of God bless you time and time again. Dr. J, I'm telling you, I am a living witness of that. Sometimes people say, Duvalier, you give out too much information. You help too much because that is just in me. But the more I give, Dr. J, the more I am going to be blessed. And you know this from our relationship. If you call me and you say, I need this contact, I need this news person, I am sending it to you. The only way I don't send it to you, I don't have it. That's just how I roll. You know what I mean?
So let me ask you this, because this is life class, and I see so many people who don't know who they are and whose they are. How did you get to this space being a black gay man in America?
My grandmother. I was like I told you, I was raised by my grandmother who was born in 1914, and my grandmother always instilled in me that I was born for greatness. She trained me up in the church to speak. She it created values in me to treat people the way I want to be treated. And so even as a leader now, Dr. J, I always ask myself before I make any decision, how would, if I was on the other side of this decision, would I want this to happen to me? My grandmother instilled that in me. And so she always taught me that you are no better than anyone else, but you should think very highly of yourself because you were born for greatness. And she encouraged me to, not get involved in what the world think you should be or what you should do, but to be curious and to find that out. And I've just been on that life journey of I never ever thought I couldn't do something, Dr. J. So with me being raised by my grandmother and never thinking, okay, I can't do this. I always think I can do this and I can be whatever I want to be, right? That's how my grandmother raised me. Um, that was the first piece of me being able to be curious to then find my way. And I would encourage people, so many times people can't find their calling in life or, what it is that they should do in this season because we all have different parts of our lives that we're going to do different things. And so many of us are called to do multiple things. But I would encourage people that are trying to find their way of what it is that they're called to do right now is to really get still and ignore the noise. So many times we have negative noise that you can't do this, you're not good at this, nothing good comes from Mississippi, you gay, so this is a barrier for you, you're black, this is a barrier. Start to ignore that noise and really get still with yourself and find out what it is that makes you want to get out of the bed every day, what it is that keeps you up at night, right? And those are the issues and the things that then you start to follow, right? For me, Dr. J, what was keeping me up at night was I just could not imagine a part of America where people go to bed hungry like I did growing up in Mississippi in poverty. So I knew when I got older, I wanted to use my platform to work on decreasing poverty. I wanted to have a better America where people could have a second chance after, going through the trauma of mental illness, right? I experienced my father dealing with mental illness, etc. And so basically, the simple way to put it, Dr. J, I just used what I had went through, my trauma, my mess, and that became my ministry. But to answer your question a little deeper, one of my gifts have been I've always ignored the negative noise and the naysayers. They mean absolutely nothing to me because I understand that God has a calling on my life and I'm going to get there by any means necessary. That's just been my thing. But people sometimes get so caught up in the negative noise, Dr. J, that they never move forward to their divine destiny. And that's the trick of the enemy. He wants you to get caught up on the negative noise. You know how much hate mail I get, how many emails? I don't read that stuff. No, I don't get caught up on that because I understand my calling.
Wow, that is so powerful. And I just wish other people, you know, would actually do their work, because it takes work to get to that spot. You know what I'm saying? You have to intentionally, work on yourself and your mess to formulate a message, so thank you for that. Um, how do you use all of your experience to fight this administration? What are some of the first things you think that we need to be doing?
Right now, Dr. J, number one, and this may sound crazy, but I'm very simple, but we got to educate people. When I traveled the country ahead of the election, you would be surprised of how much misinformation. So I'm glad for your platform tonight with educating people. We really have to educate people, and we have to put it in front of them. You know, Dr. J, I know when we were in the movement, people would be like, I'm sick of y'all. Don't tag me. Don't do this. Don't do that. But we got to put it in front of the people. The more we put it in front of the people, the more they start to see it, the more they start to digest it. Number one. Um, the second piece with my collective experiences, Dr. J, is this time around, we have to be strategic in our approach, right? We have to determine what can legally be done, right? Because there's some stuff that's not going to happen. The Gulf of America, not going to happen, right? It's just not going to happen. So, like, let's not spend a lot of time on that. But when we think about the executive orders to reverse the lowering of prescriptions, that is something that we all should be engaged in, and particularly those in rural communities, Dr. J. And so I think it's going back to the old fashioned way of, number one, using our platforms on social media to inform people, but also going back to meeting people where they are, right? And that is going to have to be a ground campaign. Dr. J, when I was traveling the country before the election, I heard a lot about we were doing too much online marketing, people wanting to get back to the roundtable conversations in the small community halls and the churches and the barbershops. One of the things that my team is working on right now, Dr. J, is going back doing an after action report with people in the barbershops and the beauty salons. I've heard from a lot of people I talked to in those spaces that we ain't heard from y'all. We ain't heard from y'all since you lost, right? And
Right.
so small things like that is going to help us understand what really happened and be able to move forward. Um, but in my honest opinion, Dr. J, I think we got to go back to the old fashioned way of really starting to have talks with individuals where they are, meeting them in the community. We are spending too much time talking to ourselves and not really talking to the people who are really affected by these policies and issues, right? So, for
Right.
example, having a survey where we're talking to people in these small clinics in the Mississippi Delta, these small clinics in Ward 7 and 8 who of DC that are going to be really affected by the reversal of the lowering of prescriptions and mandating these pharmaceutical companies to look at ways to make their medicine and product more affordable to everyday people, right? In order for us to get the right data, Dr. J, we got to actually go talk to those people. You talking to me not gonna help. I get it. Talking to you not gonna help. I'm educated. You're educated. We got to go and talk to the people and meet them where they are, so we really have a true pulse on where we're going. And let me say this, Dr. J, finally. When I was traveling the country this summer too, I started to interview people in Uber, which may have sound crazy, but just randomly asking them after Kamala Harris got into the race, I started interviewing people in Uber and saying, hey, who you voting for? Are you on board with Kamala Harris? Right? Jokingly. And this was from DC, Maryland, Virginia, Louisiana, Mississippi, New York, everywhere, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, everywhere I went for the time period that she was in the race. I did not get one person to tell me that they were voting for Kamala Harris. Not one person, not even here in Washington, D.C. Not even here in Washington, D.C. And so I tell people this story, like literally here in D.C., I had one Uber driver who said, hey, I went in today and I voted for Angela Osabrook to be my next senator, but I did not vote for Kamala Harris. I just couldn't do it. He said, because of the war in Gaza, I couldn't do it. So when the numbers came in that day, right, he had did early voting, but when the numbers came in that night, I could see how Angela numbers, and Kamala were different. Although that was one, and Dr. J, you got a PhD, that was just one person. So, I didn't have a big data pool, but based on all of my Uber rides, you would think I would have met one person who said, hey, I'm for, Kamala. And I was in Louisiana. I had people to say, nah, my cousins, all of us, we were happy to get that Trump check. And I had to explain to them. And I say this to say, even when my colleague Don Lemon was out on the streets, he kept telling them, something is going on. Something is going on. Everybody I'm talking to, they're Donald Trump. Dr. J, I had my own experience. I started that when she got in the campaign. And even in the District of Columbia, my Uber drivers, the ones that I was on, none of them committed to voting for Kamala Harris. So there was something going on the ground that all of the others we wasn't tracking around the country. And so that's why I answered the question the way I did earlier is we got to go back to the old-fashioned way. And we've done it, Dr. J. We've done it. We used to go to Clarksdale. We've been talking to people. We got to go back out and talk to the people that really matter, that really are hurting, and really find out what's driving them to make the decisions that they're making when they're going into that voting pool, if that makes sense.
And I think it's misinformation. And just to, I guess, agree with you, about putting out information, I also think it's so much junk on the internet that we have to be intentional about creating short videos that educate people. And that's one of the things I say I'm going to do more of, from Black history. They taking it out to schools, you know what I'm saying? Things that people really need to know. You see all this content, you can learn any dance you want to on TikTok, you know what I'm saying? But rarely do you get those good history lessons. Yeah. And like I said, it's missing because the way people are out here voting, it just doesn't make sense. It's some type of disconnect.
And it's going to get even worse, Dr. J, when you think about it. Even on yesterday, I was seeing where people said, hey, all of a sudden, I'm following the president of the United States on Facebook. I've never followed him before. It's like I'm being pushed into this automatic following, right? And not only are you being pushed to the automatic following, you're not even able to block him, right? That's crazy. Some people like, I was unable to actually block the president. I didn't want to see the misinformation and what he was putting out. So when I say that is, I feel like the only way we're going to take control of our narrative is not necessarily going to always be on these platforms. You're going to hear me say a lot about going back to more traditional, old-fashioned approach. Word of mouth is the most powerful piece. Before social media, we know in small towns, gossip and mess is going to sweep the town faster than the Facebook would ever do. We got to find creative ways to, like you just said, Dr. J, educate people where that also spreads all across, right? Everybody I'm talking to on yesterday and today are like, dog, Duvalier, they've already started to lure those to reverse the executive order on the pharmaceutical companies being mandated to find ways to lower the cost of insulin and those drugs for people who are on Medicaid and Medicare, right? That needs to be the narrative. And sometimes not overloading people, Dr. J, but like you said, giving it to them in one soundbite, letting them digest that today. And then tomorrow we move on and say, hey, now we're up against the removal of, DEI. And what does this mean? Explain to them, what does this mean in the grand scope of things, right? All of the civil rights cases that were being investigated under the Biden, those more than likely are not going to be touched till we have a Democrat, right? So what does that mean? Educating them on what's happening. And again, Dr. J, to go back to my earlier point, we got to find out ways outside of social media to engage our community, right? Because this misinformation is horrible, right? But if we can catch people on the streets and we can educate them and we can meet them where they are, then that then starts the process of combating it, because we're not going to be able to control something that's being controlled by the person who owns it, right? So we're going to have to find other ways and means to educate people, which is important.
The person that's, may watch this later, what can they do to get involved? What would be some of the first things that you will encourage somebody that says, hey, I want to be more involved?
Number one, I would say if this is your first time getting involved in the social justice movement and what's happening across the country, is find organizations that are already doing the work, right? Dr. J, when we think about it, your organization who's mentoring young girls, right? That's important because those young girls then go on to run for office. They go on to be world leaders. So while you may not be so in the political arena, working with the Fabulous Camp this summer is also a way to give back because you are training up the next generation of young girls who are running for office. Getting involved in local organizations that are already established in your community is the first spot. You got those local chapters of the NAACP. You all just got the Mississippi Vote nonprofit that is rolling there and educating people and doing the work. That is the first step. Absolutely. Getting involved in organizations that are already established because there's already a blueprint. And then I would say number two, you want to be informed on the issues. So finding those credible news outlets to get your information from is going to also be very, very important because we are entering into an arena of misinformation that is just going to be unbearable. So we got to figure out who are the credible sources, right? That's going to be so important, Dr. J. And to be honest with you, I still don't have the answer to that because even some of the leading national, news outlets have a twist to it, right? They have a clickbait
Right.
too. So I still haven't found the answer to that, Dr. J. To be honest with you, is how do we send people the right direction? It basically goes back to like what you said, creating people like us are going to have to create content that is going to inform people of what's happening because they look for us to inform them. They look a lot of people because they see us as people who are informed on these issues that are happening across the country. Is another way that we're just going to have to engage, if that makes sense.
What would you say to the people that's burnt out, and I'm somewhat in that group after Harris won, and I saw what happened. I didn't want to watch any news. I was just over all of it. It's like, wow, 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 wow. So, what message would you say to those people who needed a break? You know what I'm saying, from
Mhm.
everything, and just
Yeah,
discouraged.
take a break, of course, and take as much time as you need because mental health is real. The weight of all of this is real. Dr. J, I will share a story is that the night of the election, Dr. Mays and I got invited to watch the numbers come in at Howard, and we had great seats to see the acceptance speech of President Harris. And once the numbers started coming in the day after, I took sick. My body was reacting, I guess, to disappointment. Like I
Wow.
literally was in the bed for about 4 days. Like no joke. I had flu-like symptoms, and it wasn't the flu. I was just stressed the hell out, to be honest, right?
Mm.
Because I knew what was going to come of a Trump 2.0. And
Mm.
not just for me, Dr. J, but for the people that I love and the people that I've spent and dedicated my life to advocate it for. I know that Trump 2.0 is going to hurt them the worst. So I say definitely take your time. But I also say in this time around, don't get caught up in everything. Streamline exactly what your focus is going to be and focus on that and advocate for that. I feel like for Trump first go around, we were all involved in everything, every place and
Yep.
everywhere. We were fighting everything. We was the resistant, the resistant, the resistant. It goes to my point earlier. We all have a circle of influence in our community, whether big or large. Find out where that circle is and use that circle to make a difference and be a part of the resistance. So many times, Dr. J, people think that they have to be on, like on TV like me, commentating or speaking before hundreds of people. That's just where God has called me to do. But for some, it's going to be, serving and registering people to vote. It's going to be volunteering at the ACLU. It's going to be donating to causes that are, spearheading to sue the administration on things that are not right, that are not just, and that are unlawful, that we need the courts to review. So we all got to, use our circle of influence. We all got to streamline it this time around. Don't be everywhere and everything, but narrow your scope. But I would say this, before you get back into the fight and into the movement, you need to take care of yourself. Don't get back into the movement. Don't get back into the fight where you're not mentally able to do so.
Amen.
Because mental health is important. Uh, it's important. So if you are mentally not ready, if you're mentally not there, take your time. Don't get back into the fight until you are mentally ready to do so. That's important. Because so many times, Dr. J, we've been taught just keep going, keep fighting. Nah, take your mental break.
Right.
And
Balance.
yep, and come back into the movement when you're mentally ready to come. That's how we see so many people, burn out, so many people sick, so many people committing suicide, doing all this stuff because they're burnt out, they're tired, and they don't have the mental capacity to keep going. Take your break.
And then, one thing you said, how this going to impact people, especially brown people, poor people. You and I, we're going to be all right. We have PhDs, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like we make six figures, so it's not going to bother us really. We
No.
out here fighting for people, who won't
Yeah.
fight for themselves.
That's what put me in the bed, Dr. J. No lie. I'm keeping it 100. Okay. I'm in my basement right now. I was in my basement bed for about 4 days but yes, I was sick. My body was just rejecting it, and I had to get myself together. And even now, Dr. J, I'm taking my time. I am, strategizing. I have a voice in the print. And so you will continue to see me use my voice in the print. You will continue to see me, make TV appearances when I want to. During the last administration, Dr. J, I was on TV 2 or 3 times a week. All over the country. This time around, I'm being more strategic and I'm putting myself first. Yesterday, as a part of some of my contract work, I had to do a video, right, about the life and legacy of Dr. King. And I took my time. I did it it was about 7 o'clock last night because I didn't have the mental capacity with everything that was going on throughout the day to do it, Dr. J. I just had to take my time. And that's where I am now, right? I'm speaking to you tonight because of our relationship and I wanted to do this. But I'm learning to say, no, I don't have the time to do that. No, that's not for me this year. Like, they asked me to come and be out there and speak at the People's March. That ain't for me this year. I came for the Women's March. I did my job. I'm not coming out there this year. That's not for me. And I don't feel bad about it. It's not
Yep.
for me. And so we gotta be able to pick and choose. They're so used to running us like Hebrew slaves. Now I'm selected about what I'm gonna do in the movement. Everything ain't for me this year. And next year, and the next year, and the next 4 years, everything not for me. I'm picking and choosing what I do. Right? Because I gotta say something for myself, Dr. J. If I don't, I'm gonna be on empty, and I ain't gonna have nothing to give. That's just
Right,
where I'm at.
right. What do you think it's going to take for us to come up with our own Project 2025 or Project 2029? You know what I'm saying? Like, we need something in writing on what we are working towards. And we do a lot of talking, but I don't see anything in writing.
I absolutely agree, Dr. J. I don't, and I just got to be honest with you. I can't give you no sweet talking points. I think we got to get rid of gatekeeping first.
Mm.
I think we got to get rid of gatekeeping. I also think it has to be a changing of the guards, right? I think that when we look at the makeup of Congress, the age, many of them needs to retire, and it needs to be new and innovative voices. Until then, I'm sorry, Dr. J, I don't think you're going to see a written plan. Not in the next 4 years. I don't think you're going to see a written plan. People are, politics as usual. We play this respectful politics. There's no reason in hell that any state should have been raising the flag on the inauguration day when by law, the law says that we mourn for 30 days after the presidential passing. Is no reason why we feel like we have to bend the guards or kiss the hand of the
Kiss the
president
ring.
of the United States
We've been
when
seeing
we're
everybody kiss the ring.
right. We're not a dictatorship, right? And so until until we stop the gatekeeping, till we change the guards, we're not going to see a written plan. But this is what I do believe, though, Dr. J, and this goes back to the work that you started early on and I started early on, and it was really the work that really catapulted us into the public eye. We have to keep investing in our young people. During the next 4 years, you're going to see me spend a lot of my time investing in my young people, educating them, training them up to run for office,
I
educating them
said
on
that
the
10 years
power of,
ago.
yes, on the power of unity amongst themselves. And then they're going to be the ones to kind of help us break some of these barriers that we're up against. Dr. J, I'm just sorry. I am almost 40 years old, and I'm telling you, I've seen a bit of it all in DC. Um, for my 11 years here, Democrats are not going to change until we are forced to change, right?
I'm sick of
Uh,
every last one of them. I'm sick
it's
of the Democrats. They don't have a strategy that works. They come up here with this try to be
respectful for, we call it respectful politics now. It's
respectful
no time for,
bullshit. That's what it
right.
is.
It's
They on that
no,
bullshit. That's what it is.
yes,
We
and it's
cannot
no time
ask
for it.
shit.
Yeah, it's no time for it, right? We talk about, when we look at it, we are keeping up with norms that have been just disbanded, right? We got to stop paying the respectful politics, in my opinion, and we got to be more bold. So I would say in the next 4 years, you're not going to see a black agenda, right? Because there are too many gatekeepers, and the ability for black people to get on one accord is just not going to happen. It's just not. I'm sorry. But in the interim, Dr. J, I think what we can do is figure out what it is that we can do in the parameters of all circles of influence
Right.
to really push that, like I said, streamlining agendas that are going to move the needle for your prospective communities. And lastly, I just say we got to invest in young people. The young people truly indeed are the future. I would not be the man that I am today if it was not for my grandmother investing in me. I wouldn't have the character and the integrity that I have if it wasn't for my grandmother imparting that in me. And so, Dr. J, we got to continue to do that work of investing in young people. I think you do a fabulous job at that with your camp. You've been doing that work, right? And we just got to continue to expand that work as much as we can and invest in young people. A lot of the work, Dr. J, you know this from being a professor, is, training them up what to do, right? I see a lot of the young people you mentor now They are activists in their own rights. They're throwing their own rallies and press conferences, and they're leading the way in the social justice movement. And I think a lot of it is because of the work that you invested in and we invested in. So we got to just keep investing in young people. And I know a lot of people won't hear that, but as my grandma used to say, the reality of me changing grown people, Dr. J, is probably going to be slim to none. But I do believe that I have the ability to change the thinking and the mindsets of young people, high schoolers and junior high schoolers and fresh and college students. We still have the power to change their mindsets and invest in them and train them to really help in the resistant movement, because they are going to be the next movement.
And that's what I see different now. Me studying the movement, the movement was upheld by young people, college students, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And you don't really see that now. That's why I tried to get a lot of students involved when I was at Tougaloo. They probably even held a rally or march since I left there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But even with, you saying invest in young people, I remember about 10 years ago that I submitted a proposal that's what they need to do. I wanted to create like a training for young people to run for office, because that's what the Republicans do. They know right now who they're going to have run for president 8 years from now. They are training these people like Tate Reeves. Tate Reeves was groomed to be
Absolutely.
lieutenant governor and then to be the governor. They already know.
Absolutely.
So when
Absolutely.
are we going to start playing those same games?
Dr. J, we're not going to get there, but we can help our young people get there, right? We can do that. But when we look at the changing of the guards, if we were going to do that, these older Congressional Black Caucus members, they would have retired by now and had a succession plan, right? They're qualified young people to lead in the Congress, right? They're qualified young people to do those jobs. But the reason why they're there because they are gatekeepers. And the reason why that most of them die and they don't have succession plans is because of their inferior, that if they train somebody, they will run and beat them, right? That is the reality of it. Think about it, Dr. J. Sheila Jackson Lee passed away, and her daughter took over the seat for a slight period of time, right? But there was no clear succession planning for Sheila Jackson Lee. Elijah Cummings passed
They
away.
knew she was sick. They knew that.
Right.
I don't understand what they're doing, and then the people that get in the leadership positions in the Democratic Party, it's like the black bougie. It's like they forget where they come from and then want to talk and treat people any kind of way. Man, I want to slap everybody up in there. Like, don't play with me. Like, don't
But
play with me.
that's why
So,
we're gonna continue to lose elections until we become relatable to the everyday people. And you make a valid point, and I heard that point, Dr. J, when I was talking to people this summer, that they feel like that us in Washington, we are very disconnected from the everyday people. They see us as the elite, the insiders. All that we do is have cocktail socials and talk to ourselves, while their grocery prices are going up, why their gas prices are going up, why plants and jobs are leaving their communities. And so we got to find a way to connect with the everyday people. And the way that we start by doing that, Dr. J, one good gesture, in my honest opinion, would be we spent so much time in the barbershop and the beauty salon, as if that's the only place that Black people go. So if that was that important, why the hell you have not been back to a barbershop or a beauty salon to do an after action to say, what are you hearing? Where do we go wrong? Right? Where is that same energy? Right? But you got the audacity to send these people an email and ask them for donations after you
man,
done
I saw
lost
that shit.
when you haven't even came and talked to them. That does not make good sense, does it? That does not make good sense at all. So we got to find a way that we connect to the everyday people. And also, we got to make a way where it's simple, Dr. J, right? Like, people do not understand a thesis, right? It has to be to the point that they understand that if you send me back to Washington, I'm going to lower gas prices because of X, Y, and Z. And Donald Trump will never do it because of this, right? And really lay out the facts. but we find a hard time connecting to the everyday people because we are used to trying to deal with statistics and all this other stuff. So I'm still even battling with that, Dr. J, of how do we really communicate all the good work that we've done as an administration to the everyday people, right? Like we we struggle with that. We struggle with that, and people don't always connect the dots to it, right? And I also think too, we don't have the right, we don't use the right avenues to actually get the message to the people too.
You know, we are running out of time. I have another show after this. We really have to, I don't know, do some work, whatever I can do to be of assistance. If you need me to travel, I'm willing to travel. So whatever you need me to do, I'm willing to help. So, but I want to give you the final words. I give the people a call to action.
Absolutely. So I would say my call to action for all of us is that we have to, number one, we have to stop gatekeeping, and we have to know that we are stronger together, and that we have to pool all our resources together to really be of a resistance to Trump 2.0. And lastly, I would say that so many times we think that we don't have influence or that we can't make a difference. But I want to challenge you all to think about the people around you, the places, spaces that you go to every day, that you touch, those of your circles of influence. And you have the ability, whether big or small, to really make a difference. So I would challenge us all to think about what influence we have in our particular circles of influence and how we're going to use it to really make an impact. And if you all don't hear anything else we said tonight, we cannot gatekeep. We have to unify. That's it, Dr. J. We can't gatekeep. We got to unify.
Man, I love talking to you as always.
Yes,
Again,
you know you're my big sister.
whatever I can do, Doc, just let me know. I'm here for you.
Oh,
So
I know,
let's
Doc.
keep it
I love
going.
you so much.
I love you.
Me and you, we go way back.
You like Nelly and
We go way back, and Dr. J, I appreciate you so much, and your heart is so pure. You have so many people who get into this work, and the work is more about them than the people. And I would just say to you, continue to stay true to who you are. We all see your heart; it is so pure. That you are truly in it because you want to make a difference. And I know this because before anybody knew who you were, before you were, on TV and doing all that stuff, Dr. J, you were on the backside of the mountain with Marco Macmillan, supporting him behind the scenes, giving advice, helping us all to really make a difference. And so I know your heart. And so continue to do this because this is making an impact and people are paying attention. And don't ever allow anyone to try and dim your light because I see the work you're doing and I got your back. And if they come for you, just call me. I got you. I got you. I got you.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, look, what a way to end the show. Thank you so much, and I got your back too. And I fight several different ways. Thank
So
you
no,
so much.
thanks,
I
Dr.
appreciate
J.
you. I appreciate the work that you do, and I appreciate the man that you are.
Thank you, Dr. J. Appreciate you. Love you.
Love you too. Have a
All
great
right.
day.
Take care.